The dive leader that something was wrong with his wife, that she had sunk away from him and he couldn't get to her and he needed help.
What's good, y'all? So in this video I'm going to be reacting to Mr. Ballen's top 3. Again, I did the first, well, let's just say the third one. I did a third video 2 days ago, and I'm going to do this one today, and I'll do the next one on Monday, just because of my schedule. I think that's the smartest way. But the last one was crazy, so I feel like this one is just about to take like another notch, up another notch. You feel me? So anyway, let's get into it.
On October 15th, 2003,
That's 2 days
a
after
newlywed
my
couple
birthday.
named Tina and Gabe Watson arrived in Australia for their honeymoon. They were both 26 years old and lived in Alabama, and neither of them made very much money. Tina worked in the kids department of a clothing store, and Gabe worked for his father at a packaging company. But Gabe's family had gifted this honeymoon trip to Australia to Gabe and Tina, and so the couple was so excited about it, and they had taken actually a whole year to plan this trip out. It was going to be the adventure of their lives. Once in Australia, the couple spent the first week in Sydney.
Australia has supersized animals. And I just need to make that known. I've seen too many things. I've seen the bats. I've seen the snakes. I've seen the fucking spiders. I'm never going. Don't invite me because I'm not coming. I don't care if a mofo said it was $10 million. I'm not coming. They got some other shit going on.
Which is one of the biggest cities in the country. They went on a river cruise, they visited the famous Sydney Opera House, and they went to see the koalas at the zoo, something Tina was very intent on doing because she loved animals. And then on October 21st, so 6 days into their big trip, the couple headed north to the city of Townsville, which is this beautiful beach town that's right near the Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef is the world's largest and most famous coral reef system. This was going to be the real highlight of their trip. Gabe had grown up loving the water, and now as an adult, his passion was scuba diving. He was a trained rescue diver, and any chance he got back home in Alabama, he would go diving. As for Tina, scuba diving kind of scared her. She didn't like the idea of being underwater for extended periods of time and breathing in underwater. It just felt so foreign that she didn't like it. But she knew Gabe really wanted her to go scuba diving with him in Australia, and so 10 months earlier, in January of 2003, Tina had begun taking scuba diving lessons, and then right before they headed out for this trip to Australia, Tina had gotten certified in scuba diving. So, after arriving in Townsville, Gabe and Tina would spend the night in a hotel, and then early the next morning, the couple would get up and make their way down to the dock where they would board a diving boat. This boat was going to take them out into the open water, right over this famous shipwreck called the Yongola, where lots of people scuba dive.
Jesus.
It's a truly amazing place to go scuba diving. When the couple actually was out on the open water, they looked around and just could not believe how stunning everything really was. The beach town at a distance was unbelievable, and the water was perfectly clear blue, where they could see thousands of fish shimmering and swimming all around them.
That's how it was when I went to the Virgin Islands. I went snorkeling. That's what I did, because I can do that. And it was so pretty, but they was touching me a little bit, and I was like, ew.
Finally, the dive boat came to a stop over the area where the Yongola wreck was, and Gabe and Tina began putting on their dive gear, as did the other 4 tourists who were also on this diving trip. Now, Gabe and Tina were dive partners, which meant for this dive, they were instructed not to leave each other really at any point until they're back on the surface. But initially, once they and the other divers were put into the water, the entire group swam down together 100 feet to the bottom of the ocean where this shipwreck was. And at first, everything was going great. The swim down was easy, and then once they got down there, because the water was so clear and sunlight could reach them, they were able to look at each other and just really take in how spectacular this really was. But unfortunately, Gabe, he looked at his wrist at some point and noticed his dive computer, which tells you how much air you have left and what depth you're at, was malfunctioning, and so he signaled to Tina that he needed to go to the surface and get his computer fixed. And so he and Tina would swim away from the group back up to the surface, and then once on the surface, Gabe was able to talk to the dive leader on the boat, and he was able to get his dive computer fixed. And then after only a couple of minutes of being back on the surface, Gabe and Tina went back under the water and began heading back down towards the rest of the group. And as Gabe and Tina approached the rest of the group, they saw they were all kind of swimming around in dive pairs around the Youngola wreck. And so Gabe and Tina, they got down there and they joined the queue and began as well moving as a pair around the wreck. Back up on the surface, the dive leader, who was up in the boat, was just kind of sitting there waiting for the divers to come back up, when all of a sudden he noticed there was this sudden eruption of air bubbles coming up to the surface. And so he peered over the side of the boat to see what was going on, and Gabe, who had only left the surface after fixing his dive computer maybe 5 minutes earlier, came bombing up out of the water. And when he did, the dive leader immediately noticed that Tina was not with him. And before the dive leader could even ask Gabe what was going on, Gabe, who was obviously very panicked, he ripped off his mask and he began trying to tell the dive leader that something was wrong with his wife, that she had sunk away from him and he couldn't get to her and he needed help. And so the dive leader immediately put on a scuba tank, he jumped in the water and swam down as fast as he could to the wreck down below. And when he got there, he immediately saw Tina by herself laying on the sand on the bottom of the ocean, just totally motionless on her back. And so the dive leader, he swam over to her, he scooped her up, and he brought her all the way back to the surface. And then once on the surface, he put Tina into the boat, and then the dive leader, he climbed inside and immediately began doing CPR on Tina. And for 45 minutes, the dive leader tried to do CPR, tried everything he could to save Tina, but unfortunately it was not enough, and Tina passed away. An autopsy would later reveal that Tina had died from something called an air embolism, which is when an air bubble gets trapped in a blood vessel and blocks it. In scuba divers, this can happen from holding your breath for too long or trying to ascend too quickly. One theory about how this could have happened to Tina was based on what Gabe said happened when he and Tina went back down to the wreck after he got his dive computer fixed. He said they got down there, everything was fine, they were swimming around like the other dive pairs, taking pictures, when Tina started to panic, kind of randomly, and she reached out for Gabe, and Gabe said she knocked his oxygen mask off his face, and so Gabe was kind of starting to panic, and he got the mask back on, at which point Tina was kind of floating away from him, and so Gabe, not really knowing what to do, said he went to the surface to get help. And so in that time frame, perhaps Tina, tried to rush to the surface on her own, giving herself the air embolism, or maybe in her panic, she had held her breath, giving herself the air embolism. But it wasn't long after Tina's death was ruled an accident and the case
that doesn't seem like that's very rare. Like that seems like that can happen like at any moment. That's scary.
was closed, that the other 4 people who were on that dive with Gabe and Tina began reaching out to Tina's family. These divers had seen something very strange happen right around the time Tina died, and they felt like they had to tell someone. One of these 4 divers would tell Tina's family that as they were swimming around the wreck, they saw Gabe and Tina come back down after Gabe had fixed his dive computer, and pretty quickly after they reached the bottom, Gabe seemed to give Tina a hug, like a really strong bear hug. Now, there's no reason any diver would hug another diver underwater, certainly not that hard, unless it was some sort of rescue attempt. And this diver who witnessed this told Tina's family that this did not look like a rescue attempt. It looked like Gabe was trying to restrain Tina, and Tina was trying to get away from Gabe. After a few moments of watching this, the same diver would see Gabe release Tina, and at that point, Tina would go limp and float to the bottom, and Gabe would rush to the surface where he would tell the dive leader that he had this emergency with his wife. This new information led Australian authorities to charge Gabe with murder. They alleged that Gabe intentionally turned off Tina's air and then put her in that bear hug to make sure she couldn't turn it back on again. Gabe, however, has always denied this, saying his wife really just panicked and he was trying to help her but couldn't and then went to the surface. Gabe ultimately pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in Australia and served 18 months in prison. Prosecutors in Alabama then also tried to charge Gabe with murder or something else in connection to Tina's death, but ultimately a judge dismissed the case. One final note about this story, which also happens to be the reason most people know about this story, is that 2 of the 4 divers who were down there with Gabe and Tina were taking underwater pictures at the time that Tina died. Here is a photo they developed from this
Oh,
trip,
that's
which
fucked.
clearly shows Tina in the background just moments after
That's-
Gabe had released her, and she sunk to the bottom and died.
That's so sad. Are all of these about like fucked up couple deaths? Because the first one, at least the first one was sad. You know, it won't no like malicious attack or something. It was just, you know, negligent doctors and stuff like that. It's a sad story. This one, he killed that bitch. Not bitch. He killed that woman. May she rest in peace. And this is, I don't know. I've heard a lot of times, like some couples will go on trips and then like only one will come back, and I'm just like, So now anytime somebody trying to fly somewhere with me, I'm on guard. I ain't getting in the water with you, bitch. Fuck. I'm gonna tell everybody what's going on at every moment, because you really don't know, and people have like weird motives sometimes, and you know, I don't know if he really like intentionally did it or something, but to like, what would be the reason to kill like your significant other than, no, I mean, I guess there's some reason, but whatever, you know what, never mind. But anyways, it's just there's another sad story, but I'm really interested in what this last one is about. I don't know, but we will get to that on Monday. Anyways, y'all like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter, and if you have any suggestions, you know, just leave them down in the comment section. But I'll see y'all in the next one.